deca.to. You can check out more. Just to let you know, we're recording tonight, and we're grateful to have Spencer from the Cyclepath at Coxwell and Danforth in Toronto. He's going to teach us some great bike maintenance and just general bike knowledge, and we'll have some Q&A time at the end. I want to begin just acknowledging the colonial history of what we now call Canada. And these are probably the most common leverage points we have to decolonize our own lives. So I'm going to invite you to take your feet and just push them into the earth and just feel your toes or your wheels or the legs of the chair that's underneath you. And just feel what connects to the history of the land and to the land itself that provides the nutrition. Often in industrial and city societies we find ourselves in, we're quite far disconnected from that which actually is our lives. And bringing us closer to the food systems and the water and the spirit. In Anishinaabe creation story, Gitchi Manit, the great spirit, is that which brings us everything. It brings us into connection with our spirit, and it births us into being in relation with all our relations. Right now, we're quite distant from our relations. We're all on screens, so it's a good place to go within and figure out how we want to embark on our own decolonial journeys, depending on what's brought us to this land, what's brought our ancestors to this land. You may all be in different places. You may be on different continents. This land was traditionally stewarded by three main nations: the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, and the Haudenosaunee. And if you're from another place that is either settled or unsettled, sovereign or not, you can put them in the chat. I also want to just start with a little bit of quick feminist analysis of what cycling has meant for me. I grew up in a matriarch, and in the late 1890s, cycling was a revolutionary movement. It's where women under patriarchy were confined to wearing Victorian dresses, and bloomers and pantaloons became a fashion statement because it meant that women were able to travel without men. And it was a revolutionary act to be able to do that in the 1890s. So there's a huge part of social progress and justice where cycling has been a revolutionary tool for liberation. And I believe cycling has a lot to do with the future of decarbonization, for the future of our transportation systems. And it's really empowering to have people be able to take care of their own bicycles. And Spencer is going to graciously gift us with some tools to be able to do tonight. Spencer, thank you for your time and your wisdom. And we welcome you to take the floor and take it away.
Thanks so much for that great intro, Joshua. I want to make sure everyone's settled in. See more and more people trickling in. If you can't hear me, please let me know, but I think I'm good to go. Obviously, cycling is a very rich historical piece, and I really like learning a little bit about that. So anyways, hi everyone. My name is Spencer. I work at the Cyclepath on Danforth at Coxwell, just on the north side there. I started working really in the thick of the pandemic in June, right as the whole bike industry started to explode. We didn't really realize before how much resurgence you'd experience with the cycling community. And in a way, it's been amazing. A lot of people have reconnected with their love of cycling in the past year or so. Now, our goal at the Cyclepath Danforth is to see you as little as possible. We want to make sure that your bikes are ready to rock so you can ride whenever you like, and that you're not spending lots of time with your bike stuck in our shop and waiting in those big lineups. So I've kind of come tonight at the request of DECA in this great program to speak to you a little bit about that. If at any point I'm going too fast, please let me know. I want to make sure that you're able to take in as much information as possible tonight, so that you feel well informed and comfortable riding in the city, which is quite a daunting task for many people. And with the work of Councillor Bradford, we've seen some growth in the bike lanes and bike paths, and the closures of Lakeshore last summer have been an excellent tool to ease people into riding comfortably in the city and making space for this greener method of transportation. So obviously there's a lot that I can go over, so I'm gonna skim through some of the basics and help you guys understand what you can be doing to make sure that you're safer on the bicycle, that you're gonna stay out of the bike shop as much as possible, and that you're having a really enjoyable experience. And so I think the first thing I want to start with tonight are some of the safety elements you need to make sure that you're using while biking on a day-to-day basis, because going along the Danforth, especially before the bike lanes were put into place, was not fun for many cyclists, and cars are going here and there, and pedestrians as well, and making sure that you have all these pieces of equipment will greatly make sure that, or greatly increase your odds of avoiding an accident in the future. Obviously, the first one I want to go over, and I've got a couple of them right here, are helmets. Helmets are so important when it comes to protecting yourself in the case of a collision, because you're obviously balanced on a set of wheels. The first thing that's going to hit is either your shoulder or your head, and so you want to make sure both are well protected. I've got a couple of options here. These are some of my helmets. Some of them are certified helmets, some of them are not. So obviously helmets are supposed to be replaced every 5 or so years. So if you look inside your helmet and things are falling out, maybe it's time to stop by the shop and pick up a new one. But there are many different styles. This is a bucket style helmet, you see, or a skateboard style helmet. This is another one just with some ear protection, which is awesome for falling on your side. These two are your more traditional bicycle style helmets. And you can see I no longer use this one. It's rippled from hitting the gravel. And this one really saved me from a serious concussion. So really an important tool. You got kind of the bicycle style helmets, mountain bike style helmet. Now, newer helmets are coming with an awesome piece of technology called the Multi-Directional Impact Protection System, or MIPS for short. MIPS is a little plastic layer on the inside of the helmet that moves on its own. And if you were to hit your head, it'll actually break off and protect your head from severe concussion. So it's so important. If you're looking to get a new helmet, I certainly consider investing in a MIPS helmet. They're generally not more expensive, but they're certainly safer. Now, I've got some other safety tools here. And when it comes to riding at night, everyone should have a light. I've got a ton of different options here. We've got some small battery operated ones. It's really all you need. You don't need a lot. You just need to be emitting some form of light. Now, if you're looking to be sustainable, there are tons of options that are USB rechargeable. And these two options made by Blackburn are actually lifetime warranties. So you buy them once, you buy them for life. You're not going to be throwing them out every 3 or so months when the battery dies, or they stop working, or they get wet and rusted. These are really quality lights that'll cut down on your waste and allow you to kind of work towards being more sustainable while riding your bicycle, because not having lights is not an option when it comes to riding in the nighttime, and even in the dawn and dusk, which is when most accidents occur. So on those morning commutes and those evening commutes, whenever we start commuting again, which hopefully is soon, you're going to want to make sure you have these. So these are the Blackburn lights. Blackburn, yeah. Thanks, Joshua, for backing me up in the chat there. When it comes to being seen day or night, high visibility yellow is always number one. I've got a vest right here. Now, I don't usually ride with a vest, but it's a great option for if you're commuting and you want to be safe. We've got some little Velcro things that go around your arms, your ankles as well. These are great tools that don't emit light, but certainly pick up when a set of headlights glow on them. So something else to consider. Now, unless you're my mom, you're not going to have eyes in the back of your head. You're not going to be able to see behind you at all times. So it's always great to invest in a mirror as well. These are designed to mount on the left side of the bicycle, right in the handlebar end. They're really simple to use. And they mount on the left side, which is where cars are going to be passing you. Because if you choose between getting hit by a car and getting hit by a pedestrian, I think the car is going to do the greater damage. So you definitely want to make sure, and that's why We sell mirrors that are left-sided so that you can always feel safe when riding in close proximity to cars. Now, on the topic of cars, it is the responsibility of the driver to ensure that all cyclists are safe on the road. We do have the right of way as cyclists. However, that's not always the case, especially in the city of Toronto. I don't know a cyclist who could move a car if they ran into it. So you always want to make sure that you're being as cautious as possible, and because that's ultimately the #1 way you can stay safe. Now I'm going to take a quick break. If anybody has questions they want to jump in, you can either unmute yourself, throw it in the chat. On the topic of safety equipment, anybody curious about anything?
I got a quick question, Spencer.
Yeah.
If I'm clipped in and like, clipping in and out my ankle socket, is there any kind of ankle brace that I could use for that? Or is it just exercise and strengthen it?
That's actually an interesting thing to address, because I did have a couple more tools here that are more specific to mountain biking, but might assist you. One of them being ankle braces. So these are designed for when you're kind of riding on rough terrain and you're impacting the ground at high rates, and you want to make sure that you're not causing pain to your ankle. These are called the space brace, and I use them for when I'm mountain biking. But I think they might be an excellent tool if you're feeling ankle pain. They really create a lot of stiffness in your ankle that allow you to obviously maneuver them without risk. So maybe it's something to consider. If you're feeling ankle pain, invest in a pair of space braces, and they'll make your ankles feel a lot more secure.
Thank you.
I've also got a question from Dinah in the chat regarding our hours during the lockdown. So yes, we are still open. Many people use cycling on a day-to-day basis for their commuting, whether it's going to the store to pick up groceries, this, that, the other. People who are essential workers. I know a lot of nurses at Sunnybrook Hospital who use those bike paths to ride up to work in the mornings. So we are still open for maintenance and all that. We are working curbside at this time. So we are able to help you with maintenance, and we are doing sales because we want to make sure that everyone is able to get outside and get active, because that's the #1 thing. I think my mental health has been very severely impacted by the pandemic, but cycling has been a saving grace for me. So I certainly, we want to stay open as long as we can to make sure everyone's having a good time. Nobody's stuck at home staring at the TV like I was for the month of January while we were closed. So yes, we will be open Wednesday to Sunday. I've also got a question from Renee. Questions about signaling lights. There are such products. Unfortunately, we don't have any that are light specific, but we do have an awesome helmet. It's called Lumos, Lumos, and it's a helmet with built-in lights, and that comes with a little turn signal attachment that mounts on your handlebars so that you can signal on your helmet whether you're turning left or turning right. And that's an excellent piece of equipment that you might want to check out. We have a couple at our shop right now. I see Joshua drop that in the chat. So Renee, if you're interested in something that signals your turns, then check out the Lumos. Now that is an excellent segue into the next thing I want to talk about, and that's communicating on the road as a cyclist. Obviously, most of the time, both of your hands are going to be on the handlebars. You need to be able to access your brakes, to be shifting, to be steering your bicycle. But there are some ways you can communicate with other cyclists, with cars, with pedestrians, to let them know what your intentions are without a $250, $300 helmet. So they're all done with the left hand, because you want to keep one hand on the brake, and that's always going to be your back brake. So that's why you always keep the right hand on the brake. So with your left hand, you can make all of these signals. The first one is pretty obvious. It's when you put your hand straight out, and it's always important to use just an open hand rather than a pointed finger, because one is much clearer than the other. So if you put your arm straight out, that's signaling that you want to turn left, or that you're going to be moving into the left-hand lane. So sticking your arm straight out to the left you're going left. Now with your left hand, putting it on a 90-degree upwards or up in the air, this signals that you want to turn right. So if you put your hand up, you're going to be turning right. And sometimes I'll gesture up with my left hand, and then I'll use my right hand briefly to point in the direction that I'm turning. That way there's no confusion. But that's the official rule, is that a hand upwards is a right hand turn. Now, when it comes to slowing down or stopping, and yeah, they are the same thing that you learn when you're getting your license. If you don't have the access to brake signals or turn signals, they're the same thing. Now, when it comes to slowing down, your arm's going to be 90 degrees downwards. So putting your arm downwards means slow down. I'm trying to stop, especially if you're in the bike lane on Danforth, which kind of constricts you to a set path. You want to make sure that cyclists coming up behind you know exactly what your intentions are. So to slow down, you put your arm 90 degrees downwards. Now, there are some other things that if you're riding in a group, you can use. Some people like to point at potholes, and they'll sometimes use this signal to indicate that there are potholes or maybe broken glass or gravel, things that would hinder a riding experience. And that's always an important thing to be doing if you're riding kind of in close quarters with someone else. Obviously not within physical distancing rules, but if you're riding in a pack of bicycles, making sure that the person behind you who doesn't have a clear sight on where they're riding, make sure that you pass on kind of all the information that you're seeing. I'll take another brief pause here if anybody else wants to ask a question about some of those hand signals. Alrighty, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to move on to the next thing I'd like to go over, which is locking up your bicycle and theft protection. This is so important in the city of Toronto, and especially as we run out of bikes to sell, people need bikes, which means leaving your bike in an unsecure fashion might result in you having to buy a new one. I'm going to share my screen briefly to show a couple of images I found on the internet of some bikes, and I want you guys to drop in the chat if you think they look secure, or if perhaps you're going to want to figure out a better solution. Let's start with this one right here. All righty. This is a picture of a bicycle locked to what appears to be a movable folding sign. Does anybody think this is a secure option? Great. I've got some not secures in the chat. This is not secure at all. While you do have a lock through the front wheel, all you have to do is pick up the sign, and that bike is ready to go. So this is definitely a not secure option. Let's try another one. Here we've got a bicycle. It's also locked up. Anyone see what the problem is with this one? Renee got it. There we go. So the bike is locked up. The front wheel or the rear wheel is locked up to the frame itself, but the bicycle is not secured to any immovable objects. So this can easily be taken. And although that lock could probably be cut in about 5 seconds by a proper set of tools, that bike can be taken without even unlocking it to a secure location without suspicion to be cut open and then potentially resold to somebody else. So this is definitely not a secure option. Now this final one, and this is actually a design that Kryptonite Locks uses. So this is definitely one of the correct ways to lock up a bike. Can anyone point out maybe 1 or 2 points as to why this is a secure locking method?
This is a secure method, so if they take your bike, they have 2 locks and it's locked to the frame, so they can take it, they can't unlock your bike and they can't use it. So if they steal it,
Absolutely.
useless bike, you can't. It's like worthless. Why would you steal it if there's
For sure, for sure. I think that's a pretty clear explanation right there. To cut a U-lock, you're actually going to require an angle grinder, which is a very loud tool and very conspicuous tool to use in public. So not only is the bike locked with a U-lock to an immovable object, but the frame is locked to it, the rear wheel is locked to it, and then they've actually got a soft cable that wraps into the front wheel. That way nobody can pop that off and walk away with that part. So this is definitely a proper technique. And this is actually the technique that I use when locking up my bicycles. I've got my rig right here. I've got the Kryptonite New York series lock, which is their heavy duty lock. And I've got my 4-foot cable as well. So that I'm properly locked up to an object. And I've also got all of the parts of my bike secure, so no one's walking away with the front wheel, which on this bike would cost me about $800 to replace. I don't have a week and a half pay line around during the pandemic. So you always want to make sure that you're using the correct tools for what you plan to be doing. So for an expensive bike, definitely get a U-lock, or for long-term locking, like if you're using an underground storage facility in an apartment or a condo, you want to have a U-lock. That way your bike is secure for long periods of time. However, if you're running to the grocery store and you're just using your city commuter bike and you want to run in for 5 minutes and you don't want to carry a heavy lock, you can opt for a cable lock option. While these aren't necessarily a secure option and they can be cut through pretty quickly, in a public area, someone walking around with a set of bolt cutters is going to be pretty easy to notice. And I think if you're running in quickly, you can get away with using a cable style lock. So that's it for securing the bikes. Anybody else have any questions about that? 90% of securing a bike is just making sure that it looks secure. When it comes down to it, bike theft is really a crime of opportunity. People see something that is easy for them to take and they grab it right away. If you make sure that your bike is locked up to something, no matter how small, some people are just going to walk away and not go through all the effort. So making sure that you have at least something in place will scare off enough people to make sure that your bike's secure to a certain degree. Can a U-lock be snapped if the bike is lifted and pushed against a wall? I think you'd have a pretty difficult time doing that. I've never seen it happen, but I'm sure with enough time, somebody could come up with a unique way to break through a lock. Now with the Kryptonite locks, and this is the reason why we carry Kryptonite locks at the Cyclepath, is these locks come with a lifetime warranty and they come with theft protection. So this lock right here, the New York style lock, is valued at protecting a bicycle up to $4,000. And that means if you register that bike with the Kryptonite online services on their website, if their lock gets broken to take your bike, they're going to send you enough to cover replacement costs. Now, that's not necessarily going to cover this bike, which is why I try not to lock my bike up at all. But it's certainly a valuable investment is a Kryptonite lock, because you're going to be protected well. Do I have suggestions for locking and storing bikes in small East York homes? Absolutely. I've got a small East York home. Some of my bikes are in my bedroom. I sleep with them at night, but I can't fit all of them there. So you certainly got to make sure that you're locked up well. I like to suggest keeping bikes indoors, not only for the health of the bicycle itself, but also it keeps bikes out of being seen, right? If a bike is sitting on a front porch, someone's going to be walking down the street and see a great opportunity to make a quick buck. Keeping things behind locked doors in a shed, if you have access to one, fantastic. In a basement, if you have access to one, fantastic. Those are definitely the number one tools. And also beyond that, if you're keeping it behind a locked door, you want to have a lock on it as well. I've got these really nice Home Depot storage hooks in my shed that I just hang my bikes up on, and then I run a cable lock through them all. That way, even if someone were to get through the deadbolt on my door, which would be like breaking into my house, they'd still be stuck with trying to break a lock that's connecting a bunch of bikes together. So a locked door or a garage door is not always the go-to number one solution. You always want to make sure that the bike is adequately locked, even if it's behind closed doors. The third tip I'd have for locking up in East York, and a tool that I've seen used very, very frequently in this area, is there's a GPS tracking app called Strava. A lot of people use it for running or for cycling or for rowing. Strava, it GPS tracks your ride. So if you take a photo of your bicycle, or if you ride past somebody, they can see, oh, we've had 10 people ride past here in this 1 hour time frame. And I saw that bike and I'm thinking it's going to end up here. Let me go and check the garages in that area and see if I can find that really nice bike. So keeping your bikes off social media, or keeping your Strava disconnected from your social media is super duper important. That way people don't know to hunt you down and to find it. Because I had a friend last year who was tracked through Strava. They came down, broke into his garage and took 3 of his bicycles. Because he didn't have them locked in his shed, and because he didn't have his shed locked, and because he used Strava, all of these things kind of played in together to result in him losing about $3,000 worth of bicycles. Any other questions while I'm on the topic of theft prevention? Yeah, no problem, Nicholas. I'm glad I could help you out with that. And locking things in the backyard is super duper important. Keeping them out of sight, number one. And like I said about locking, just having something on the bicycle, whether it's a cable lock, a U-lock, a folding lock, something will deter someone who's not necessarily there just for the bicycle. Alrighty, and I think I've covered all that it comes to with bicycle safety, theft prevention. I'm gonna take you guys on a quick tour to the websites that I built. The Cyclepath website was very outdated. So when I got there, I told my bosses, Christina and Carlos, I said, I know you guys don't understand how to use a computer, but I do, and I need to revamp the website. And I added this really neat tool, the resources tab, and I plan on growing it a little bit more with all of this information. I've got a tab on bicycle safety, a tab on theft prevention, and then this one I wanted to show you all, which was the bicycle laws and fines. So the Highway Traffic Act, which governs how we use motor vehicles, also has many violations that you can cross on a bicycle. So you need to make sure that you are as safe as you can be and following the rules of the road, no matter if you're on 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4 wheels, 10 wheels, they all apply. Now the fines work a little bit differently. In most cases, distracted or careless operation of a bicycle is still a very hefty fine and can end you with or give you a very serious penalty. But just making sure that you follow stop signs, you're signaling your lane changes, you're not going past a streetcar while it's stopped. All of these things will keep you from getting pulled over by a police officer in the event that it does happen. Now, there are a couple of pieces of equipment that you need to have on your bicycle if a police officer pulls you over. Otherwise, you can get a fine. And one of those things is a bell or a noise signaling device, whether it's a bell or a whistle or a little horn. Having something on your bicycle to signal your presence is paramount in the city of Toronto. So having those are key. And the other one that I talked about earlier are lights. Having a front solid or flashing light and a rear solid or flashing light will mean the difference between a ticket at the end of the day or walking away just after a small conversation with a police officer. So those are very important key things that you need to make sure you're following on the road. I'm going to jump back into the chat quickly before I move on to the next part. Yes, Joshua, an amazing point and something that I use frequently. Using your voice is very important. When you're going along the Danforth, using a bell becomes a little bit monotonous in the ears of passersby. Everyone hears bells all day long, and it starts to kind of they become a little bit deaf to the sound. So yelling, hey, rider on your left, or hey, get out of the bike lane. When it comes to people impeding the bike lane, I don't really mind being a little bit assertive or a little bit of aggressive. You need to make sure that your presence is heard and that you are noticed before it's too late and before two people are taking a trip to the hospital, potentially more. That you got to make sure that you amplify your voice or use your bell, and make sure that you have a hand on the brake in case they don't realize that you're present. These things will significantly reduce the risk of somebody getting seriously injured. And there are statistics show that about 7,500 Canadians every single year end up in intensive care due to collisions caused by bicycles and cars, bicycles and pedestrians, bicycles and other bicycles. All of these things are very real threats that you need to make sure that you're paying attention for, which is why I purchased the nice AirPods that can actually increase surrounding noises that I use, so I can play a little bit of music on my ride and then be aware of my surroundings. I'm going to be able to hear the car coming up next to me before I see it. I'm going to be able to hear the pedestrian drop a piece of glass on the ground in front of me before I run over it. Being aware of your surroundings is super important. I see a message from Shauna saying, do you need lights in the daytime? No, lights in the daytime are not required. As soon as your visibility is impeded by nighttime, or if there's serious fog, you will require some sort of lights. If visibility is not number one, if visibility, you can't see all the way down the road, it's always a great idea to have a set of lights, which is why I keep a set usually permanently mounted on my day-to-day bike. That way, if I ever get caught in a sticky situation, I know that I'm visible from the front and the rear. Now, one product I don't have on me, but we sell at the Cyclepath is it's another light by Blackburn, that brand that I mentioned earlier, and it's the 2-for light. So that's a rechargeable lifetime warranty light that acts as both a front and a rear light. And that's a really excellent set to buy to have on the front and the rear, because in the event that your red rear light dies, you're able to swap your white one onto the back, because we do have eyes facing forward, but you can't see what's behind you. So it's super important to always have, at the bare minimum, a red light. That way you're protected from the rear and the front. I'll give another quick moment or two for follow-up questions. And I'm going to take a drink because my mouth's getting a little bit dry. Little side note, our website is thecyclepath.com. The Cyclepath, which I'm sure many of you have heard the name before, used to be a large national franchise. And then a few years ago, the franchise split up. Some stores kept the names, some stores changed their names, which is why you hear Cyclepath Norco, the Cyclepath Markham, the Cyclepath Mississauga. And that's why we are the Cyclepath Danforth, is that we're an independent store, but we share the name that we started with 33 years ago, when Carlos and Christina were in their late teens, early 20s, getting the bike shop going. So see a message from Andrea: tips for cycling with kids in the bike lanes. This is super important, because kids of all ages are more than welcome to be biking in the bike lanes. They're absolutely entitled to be doing so. And oftentimes they won't be going at the same pace as a high-speed commuter will be. So feeling nervous about riding with your kids in the bike lane is absolutely common. I think the most important things to keep in mind are that you probably want to keep your kiddos ahead of you, or if you're riding with multiple adults in the group, keep an adult at the front and an adult at the rear, to kind of shepherd the kids along the bike lanes is super important, and to be the eyes and ears, and to make sure that if a cyclist is to come up from the rear, they're not going to miss a little 3-foot kid on a 14-inch bicycle riding along. Now, under city bylaws, kids are allowed to ride on the sidewalk. So if it's more comfortable with you, you can always ride a little slower in the bike lane with your kids on the sidewalk. That way, they're out of the risk of being run over or plowed down by another cyclist. Now, I think Toronto cycling culture is fairly nice. And I think everyone's really looking out to make sure everyone's having a good time. And I don't think anyone's going to be incredibly demeaning when it comes to riding at a slower pace. But sticking to the right, just like in a car, in the right-hand lane is always a great idea. That way someone has the ability to sneak by on your left, but they will make themselves known. Does that answer your question, Andrea?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, great. All right, I'm going to move into one of the final portions I wanted to talk about, and that is changing a flat. And I'm sure that's why many of you guys came out tonight. I actually made a little bit of a video with my coworker, Dylan.
Spencer, can I just point your direction to the chat? Kirk has a question before you move on that.
Kirk, oh, sure. Yeah, tips for riding in a bike lane with someone is uncomfortably on your tail. Tailgating. It is a very, very difficult thing to experience in a car, on a bicycle, walking. I know walking in a narrow area with someone behind you is also quite intimidating. I think the same rules apply as if you're in a vehicle or if you're walking. I think that the best option is ultimately to slow down and let that person pass, because if that person's not giving you the space that you need to feel safe, it's usually not the best idea to ask them to back off. You might just want to let them fly by, go about their day. Maybe something's on their mind. Maybe their partner's in labor. Maybe their boss is yelling at them to get to work, and confronting the situation is not always the best way to resolve it. So I think for your own safety and kind of the easiest way to solve the solution quickly is to pull over, slow down, or stop and let the person to go on by. Does that help you out, Kirk? I know there's no perfect rule to dealing with it, and every situation is a little bit different, but I hope that kind of guides you in the right direction. Awesome, great to hear. Okay, we're gonna jump into this final portion. A little photo of me. This is me doing a little triathlon when I was a kid. I've been biking for a while. I know many of you have been biking more than me, but I certainly have a passion for the sport. So, alrighty. Let's pull this up, and I'm gonna stop and go with this. That way, I'm not outpacing. This video is a little bit quick, but I'm gonna slow it down. So we're gonna be repairing a flat with my friend Dylan today. Dylan is one of our amazing mechanics. He's actually kind of phasing himself out. He's going down a different career path right now, but he volunteered to help me make this video. So he's got a customer's bike up on the stand here. We're going to start with the flat repair, and then we're going to talk about patching, which is a great sustainable way to make sure that you're not creating additional waste for the environment, and that you can continue to reuse your tube many times before you need to replace a new one. And this is also a key thing to learn this year, as we're out of tubes at the store. We cannot sell any tubes to customers who want to replace their flats. They're all kind of reserved for our service department. So if you want to be repairing your own flats, knowing how to patch is key. Alrighty, so the first step that Dylan's going to do here is he's going to pedal the bike and shift it down into the smallest ring. This will make it much, much easier for him to pull the wheel off. Now he's going to go up with his hand and disengage the brake up on the top. Can someone let me know if you can see my cursor? Can you see my cursor at all?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. All right. So I'll just be pointing at some key parts. So he goes up and he disengaged the brake. That way the wheel can come off. Now each bike is a little bit different, but this is one of the most common systems that you'll see while riding. Now he's coming down and loosening off the quick release, and you just tap the wheel and it should fall right off. Real easy, but that's how you safely get the wheel off and you don't break any parts in the meantime. Now he's popping the dust cap off, and he's going to grab one of his tire levers and actually let out some of the air pressure. A lot of the time, if you have a small rip in the tube of your tube, you're not going to lose all of the air. There might still be a little bit of pressure. So letting that air pressure out to make it as flat as possible will make the rest of the flat repair much, much simpler for you. Now he's going to dig on in there with the tire lever. If you're going to be doing flats, you want to get a set of tire levers because they're plastic and they won't scratch the rim and they won't break the tire. They're a very important tool. And he's going in with the tire lever, and he's going to yank the rubber bead, which is that there's a metal part that holds the tire in place. He's going to yank it out with his tire lever, get in there with another one, and then just slide right around. Dylan's been doing this for probably a decade, so he knows what's going on. He knows how to do it quickly. So I kind of wanted him to go a little bit slower, but he didn't. Now what he's doing is he's pulling the valve of the tube out first. This is the best way to do it, is to pull the valve out first. That way it's not going to get caught when you try to pull the tube out. And he just slides it right out. Notice how he didn't take the entire tire off of the rim. It's not necessary. When you're doing a flat repair, you only have to pop one side of the tire off. That way you're making less work for yourself. So at the Cyclepath, we always replace your flats with a new tube, but that's just for safety purposes. That's kind of how we ensure that your flat is going to be perfectly fixed every time. But you're more than welcome to patch at this point in time, and I do it all the time. I patch very frequently because it saves me money and it saves the environment, and it's easier to do at home than going up and buying a new one. Anyways, here's Dylan opening up a new tube. And he's going to start by unrolling it, and he's going to put a little bit of air into the tube just to give it that tire shape. And that's super helpful. Rather than stuffing a limp tube into your wheel, having just a little bit of air in there will help guide it into its place and make sure that nothing gets caught. Alrighty. Now, just like we took the valve out first, we're going to put the valve back in first. Slide that into its place, and then he's going to go around and by hand tuck the entire thing in all the way around. You want to make sure you push the tube all the way in. That way it doesn't get caught in between the outside of the tire and the inside of the rim. That little sandwich, when you put more air in, is going to rip the tube, and you're going to be back to square one. So making sure you put it in all the way back. Now, the next step is putting the tire back into its place, or reseating the bead, as it's called. Now, Dylan's a pro. He's going to do it with his bare hands, but you're able to use the tire levers to do this as well. You want to start at the valve, pull the bead of the tire inwards, and then slide around all the way to the other side, the side opposite of the valve. Now, this is the tricky part. It gets a little bit tight there, but Dylan's he's a strong guy, so he knows what he's doing. And then he's going to slowly, not all the way up at once, but he's going to slowly add air, and he's going to be visually inspecting both sides to see if the bead has seated correctly. You see, he goes along with his hands. He doesn't see any bulges. He doesn't see any tears. He doesn't see anything sticking out. Everything looks like it's properly aligned. And he's going to go bit by bit just to make sure that he doesn't accidentally break the tube that he's just put in. So it's a slow process here. Obviously, if you get a flat, you're going to want to get on the go as quickly as possible, but you got to make sure you have patience when pumping it back up. Now he reinstalls the dust cap, and he's off to the races. Now he's got a fully operational tire, and he's going to install the wheel back on the bicycle. It's the reverse process to taking the wheel off. You want to put the chain on, slip the wheel in, and then he wants to make sure that it's all the way upward, up into there are little gaps where the quick release sits. You want to make sure you pull it all the way up. That way it's not on an angle, and then your wheel's going to wobble when you put it back in. You want to make sure it's all the way up on both sides, and it should sit very straight in there. See, this is the hardest part for sure to get to do. Even Dylan struggles with it a little bit here, because you've got the tension of the chain. He's got to hold up the wheel. He's supporting it himself. It's a tricky process, but then you see it pops right in there for him. Now he's going to tighten the quick release back on, and that's ready to go. And then before he tests the gears, he's going to make sure that he reinstalls the brake, because if the wheel starts spinning when you check the gears and you want it to stop, it's no fun sticking your hand in a bunch of spokes to grab it, or to try to grab onto the rubber of the tire. It's just going to hurt your hand. So he reinstalls the brakes, and then he's going to go through all of the gears to make sure that nothing's misaligned. You'll notice if it's misaligned, and this step is super important, if it's misaligned, the derailleur, which pushes the chain into the new gears, the derailleur is going to get caught in the spokes, and you could rip it out and create a bigger problem for yourself. You want to make sure that everything seems to be aligned correctly. That way you're not making a trip to us anyways. Just instead of replacing the flat for $30, you're replacing the derailleur hanger, and at the end of the day, you're going to be paying us $100, and it's going to take a lot longer. So putting the wheel on, you want to make sure it's perfectly straight. That way you're not causing any headaches for yourself. Now we're going to go into the patching of a tube. And Dylan's just installing an adapter because it's a different style of valve. But what he does is he pumps the tube up way too much, and then you're going to hear a hissing noise out of the hole. And there you can see the hole right there. Now, sometimes with a slow leak especially, you're not going to be able to see the hole because the flat might take 24 hours to occur. With those ones, a little helpful trick is to grab a bucket of water and stick the tube into the bucket of water. Because if there's air moving, it's going to bubble, and you're going to be able to pinpoint the location no matter how quiet it is, no matter how small the hole is. Luckily with this one, Dylan was able to see the hole. Now he's going to hit it with a sandpaper. He's got a patch kit, and the patch kit that he's using has everything that he needs. It's a glueless patch kit, so it's already like the patches are already sticky. It comes with a little piece of sandpaper. You sand the surface to create a little bit of abrasion, just like if you're painting a wall, you want to add some primer. That way the paint doesn't flake. In this case, you don't want the patch to flake off. So he's sanding it down, and then he's going to brush off those little rubber particles that come out. That way the sticky stuff is not just grabbing onto loose particles. And then he comes in with one of those patches, and he's going to massage it on. You want to start from the middle of the hole and massage outwards. And you'll see him do that as he gets it on there. He massages outwards from the hole. That way you don't create any little channels for air to escape. It's really securely patched. Carlos wanted to get in the video. That's our owner, Carlos. But now he's got a fully secure patched tube that he's able to reuse in the event that he wants to reuse it. And this is a great tool. Now this is something that you then put back into your wheel and be able to reuse, and patches can last very long times. It's generally not something that's going to flake off after a couple of rides. If you do it well, it should last you until you get another puncture. Alrighty, I think that's everything in the video. Awesome, you can see it's fully sealed, no air bubbles, and he's very excited. That was a lot of information to process, so I've got it in a movie format, and I'm likely going to try to publish it on the website if my bosses permit me to release trade secrets. But obviously, we want to make sure that you're able to do this on your own. Especially, it limits contact between us and you, and it allows everyone to be safer and more sustainable for the future. So we're getting close on time here. So I want to open the floor up for anybody who has questions about flat repairs or anything that I've talked about, or processes that we're using at the Cyclepath during the pandemic. I've got a question from Vanessa. First, I've got a question from Nicholas saying, what do you use to patch a tube leak? Yes, so you use a patch kit. And if you come by the shop and ask for a patch kit, we'll be able to show you what you need. Some of them are very small, like the size of a quarter, really easy to store in a pocket or in a little bag on the bicycle itself. They're super cheap as well too, about half the price of a tube, and you get about 5 or 6 patches. Now I've got a question from Vanessa. Is it possible to fix if the valve is broken off? So the valve is a tricky part of the bicycle. or part of the tube. Unfortunately, if the valve is broken, you're going to have to invest in a new tube. That's not something that you can swap out, and it's a tricky part. Now, also, if you have a rip very close to the valve, or the side of the valve where the tube connects has torn, you're not going to be able to patch it, and that's another reason why you'd have to get a new tube. Then I've got a question from Miss Nancy Harris saying, is there a particular bike repair kit you would recommend? There are about 1.5 million tools that you could use to repair a bicycle. Now, there are some basics like a patch kit, tire levers, and a pump, as well as some bicycle chain lubricant. Those are great things to have accessible at home. So definitely invest in a patch kit, a hand pump, some bicycle chain lubricant, and that's bike specific stuff. Don't buy WD-40 and try to use it. It's not going to work the same way. And then also some tire levers, which are an important tool to utilize. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to have is a set of Allen keys. Metric Allen keys are excellent for working on bikes. They'll allow you to access most of the parts of the bicycle and be able to adjust your seat and to be able to adjust your handlebars. So a set of metric Allen keys would also be an excellent set of tools to grab. I got a question from Renee saying, what were the bike lights that you recommend? Yeah, so I'll type them into the chat. They're the Blackburn Twofers. I'm not sure how many we have left at the shop. A lot of things are hard for us to get into stock due to supply chain shortages, but the Blackburn Twofers are certainly the top dog when it comes to sustainable, rechargeable lifetime warranty lights. They're a little bit pricey. They're usually about $40 per light, but it's a great investment long-term when it comes to being prepared to ride at night, especially if you're a commuter. What would I recommend as a basic 5 or 10 point inspection? You know, that's a great question, and you can get as detailed as you want or as simple as you want. When I get on a bike for the first time, after maybe the winter months or after a couple of years of riding it, the number one thing I'll do is check the tire pressure. If the tires are flat or the tire pressure is too low, you want to pump them up, which is why having a pump at home is an awesome investment. Pumping them up is super key to making sure that they ride correctly and you don't damage the bicycle any further. So step one would definitely be check the tire pressure. Step two, I'd probably recommend is investing in some chain lube and lubricating the chain. If it's been sitting for a while, you want to make sure that you're not going to be causing unnecessary wear and tear on the bicycle once you get it going. So I guess step two would be lubricate the bike chain. Step three is get on the bike and ride, because ultimately the number one way you're going to feel any problems on the bicycle are by riding it. And if you hear unusual noises that you haven't heard before, or if something feels stiff, or if the shifting isn't great, then you've got a problem and you want to address it as soon as possible. Because a lot of things on a bicycle can snowball to the point where you're investing $200, $300, $400, $500 into replacing parts, and you almost want to be looking at a new bike. But obviously, given the current climate of bike sales, that's not necessarily possible. We just don't have the supply, and obviously, it's not very sustainable to be buying a bicycle, not maintaining it for a long period of time, and then just chucking it out and buying a new one. So those would be my 3 steps right there. Check the tires, check the chain, get up and ride would be kind of what I do. And that is what I do. Which bike seat would I recommend? I have a gel one and I end up sore. Yes, there are so many ways to ensure that the bike seat that you've got or the saddle is correct. Now, there are a bunch of different styles of bicycles, mountain bikes, road bikes, comfort bikes, that all have different saddle designs depending on how you sit on the bicycle itself. So having tons of padding is not necessarily the best option because it might create too much of a pressure on your spine and on your tailbone. So certainly always take into consideration how you sit on your bicycle, how forward you lean versus how straight your back is. and get the advice from a bike team member, like somebody at the shop, the Cyclepath Danforth. We're always willing to kind of guide you down the right path and to find the correct product for you, whether it's $2 or $2,000. We want to make sure that you walk away satisfied and that you're getting exactly what is suitable for you. All right, we're sneaking up on